Hi there, welcome back to the second video in Let's Figure Out AWS VPC. Alright, so a quick recap of part 1, the previous video. So in previous video, we learned how to create a VPC. We did a demo of it, of creating a VPC. We said basically VPC is a boundary that we create in a region for our resources, and basically it has three properties. We give it a name, it is created in a region, and then we specify a CIDR, a CIDR block, which will give a list of private IP addresses that would be used by the VPC to assign it to our virtual machines. Now, taking further our discussion, next, what is our aim? Our aim is to create virtual machines within the VPC. And in previous video, I had a diagram in which we actually created a virtual machine in a VPC. That is not exactly accurate. We cannot just directly create a virtual machine in a VPC. After you create a VPC, you now need to further create smaller networks within VPC, smaller areas of isolation, something called as subnet. So this should not be difficult to understand. Imagine, take an analogy of VPC to a country. So your country gives you isolation. A foreigner cannot just move into the country. People within the country can freely move in from one place to another. However, we further divide our country into multiple states, right? So that it is easier to manage the country. Basically, we can apply different rules to different states. One state can have an official language as Telugu, other can have official language as Marathi. Some state might honor international driving permit, other state might not honor international driving permit. So the bottom line is, to different states, we want to apply different rules. Likewise, even here, when you create a VPC, you would be creating different types of resources. Bare minimum, imagine you would be creating a web server and a database server. Bare minimum. Now, you want to apply different types of rules to these two resources. A web server should be exposed to internet so that people can send HTTP requests using their browser to your web server. Whereas your database server should be isolated as much as possible. It should not be exposed to internet. Your database server should only be accessed by your web server within the VPC, right? So two different resources, two different rules. So how do you achieve this? You achieve this by further dividing your VPC into smaller areas called as subnet. So in this case, basically what you will do is, once you create a VPC, you will further divide a VPC, or you will create a smaller area within a VPC, which is called as subnet. Now, similar to VPC, a subnet also has three properties. One, a subnet will have a name. So if you're gonna put web servers in the subnet, you will call it as SN web. Similar to VPC, it has a second property which talks about location, but this time that second property is not a region. VPC is created in a region spanning across availability zones, whereas a subnet is always created in one particular availability zone within the VPC region. So you need to specify the availability zone where you want to create a subnet. And the third property that a subnet requires is a CIDR block. So obviously, now what did we say about VPC? Is that we have given a range of IP addresses, right? Now in this case, we have given 65,565 IP addresses. Now out of the 65,565, you then need to give a CIDR block of the subnet, wherein you will say, out of the 65,565 IP addresses of VPC, please set aside this 255 IP addresses, right? So remember, what is the CIDR block we have given for the subnet? 10.0.1.0/24. That means we are saying all the virtual machines created in this subnet will have private IP address starting from 10.0.1, 10.0.1, and then .0, .2, .3, and so on. So 3 properties. Now once you create a subnet within a VPC, then you can go ahead and create your virtual machine inside a subnet. So again, repeating myself, you don't just create a virtual machine directly in a VPC. After you create VPC, you then need to further create one more component, one more layer of isolation within VPC, which is called as subnet. And within the subnet, then you create a virtual machine. Same as when I say I stay in India, I can be very specific saying that I stay in a state called as Telangana in India, right? So once you create a virtual machine in the subnet, and when it is created, what VPC will do is VPC will then pick up one IP address from the list of IP addresses that are set aside for your subnet, and that one IP address from this list will be assigned to your virtual machine. Alright, now once you have created this subnet, then later you will set rules so as to give internet connection to this subnet, so that HTTP traffic can be sent to your web server and the responses can be given back to the user. Now similarly, you may have database servers. You would not put your database servers in the same subnet. Why? Because remember, we are going to expose this subnet to outside world, and you don't want to expose your database servers such that people from outside world can send a request to your database servers. So for your database servers, what we'll do, we will create one more subnet in our VPC. Again, we will call this subnet now as SNDB, subnet databases, where we'll put all our databases. Again, property 2, it has to be created in an availability zone. So basically you will create your subnet in any one of the availability zones of the VPC region. Third property, again, you need to provide the CIDR block for your SNDB. And this time we'll provide the CIDR block 10.0.2.0/24, which means what? Out of the 65,565 IP addresses of your VPC, these 255 IP addresses will be set aside, will be blocked for your SNDB. That means when you create a virtual machine, a database server inside your SNDB, one IP address from this would be selected and would be assigned to your database server, right? So another analogy of understanding a subnet is something similar to imagine you have a company. So the first thing that you will do for your company is you will build a wall, right? A compound that is similar to a VPC. Now after that, maybe in your company you will have different departments. Let's say bare minimum you have a sales and marketing department and a research and development and R&D department, right? The sales and marketing department will have security a bit relaxed, so that people can walk in, presentations can happen, seminars can happen, and so on, right? So the sales and marketing department will have its own security boundary, wherein the rules would be bit relaxed rules. Whereas your research and development department, you want high security rules, right? You don't even want the employees or the people working in your R&D department to carry a cell phone into the office. So your R&D department will have its own boundary, will have its own security rules, where they will say that nobody is allowed, no outsiders are allowed, only internal employees, only employees belonging to research and development department are allowed, and maybe when they are walking in, their cell phone will be kept aside, and so on and so forth. So basically what do? We separate our work area and apply different rules to different departments. Something similar that we do in subnet within a VPC. We split our VPC in different subnets so that we can apply different rules to each subnet and put in appropriate resources. All right. So having said that, hopefully we have understood this. Let's go ahead and see this in demo. Let's actually go ahead and create subnets in our VPC that we created yesterday. So for that, let me move on to the browser view. Bear with me for a second. All right. So recall that yesterday we created this VPC HR. I said basically this fictitious VPC will have will have servers related to our HR application. Now, within the VPC, and this is intentionally, we didn't go much further into a VPC. The VPC was created yesterday. We created the VPC with a CIDR block of 10.0.0.0/16, and this is what it shows now. Now the next that we will do is we'll go ahead on the left hand side, we can see subnets. We'll go ahead and create a not a but couple of subnets inside our VPC. So let's click on subnets. Let me hide this. Let me just, all right, increase. Okay. So notice here, when I go on to subnets for my Singapore region, I already have two subnets. Now these, remember we talked about it yesterday, that in the Singapore region, I had a default VPC, and that default VPC has two subnets inside it. So these subnets are also automatically pre-created and they are called as default subnets regardless. Now we'll go ahead and create a subnet or two subnets in the new VPC that we created yesterday. Creating subnet is simple. All we need to do is click over here, create subnet. We said subnet has a name. I'll call it as SN web to put all my web servers. Next, it is asking this subnet will be in which VPC. I'll click over here and I'll say VPC HR. Next, remember what did we say? You always create a subnet in an availability zone. Now, if you say no preference, then AWS will pick up whichever subnet, on a random basis, or rather we'll select it. We'll say create this subnet in AZ1A. Next, it is asking for the CIDR block, and it is also giving us the CIDR block of the VPC. So keep in mind the CIDR block for the subnet should be part of the CIDR block of the VPC, which means you cannot just say 192.168.0.0/24. If I give a CIDR block like this, I try to create, I'll get an error. Why? Because it is saying, dude, you have IP addresses for the VPC starting with 10.0. Your IP addresses for the subnet should be part of those CIDR block only. You cannot just create some other CIDR block for your subnets. So, okay. So what we'll do is we'll make it a part of the same CIDR block. I'll say 10.0 and .1/24. That means all the VMs created in my SN web will have private IP address starting from 10.0.1. Having done that, I click over here, create. I say close, and my SN web is created in our VPC that we created yesterday. Now let's go ahead and create one more subnet for our databases. So I click over here, create subnet. This time I'll call it as SNDB. Again in VPC HR. In availability zone, this time I'll select a different availability zone, AZ1B. And this time the CIDR block I'll give is 10.0.2. 10.0/24, which means all the VMs in SNDB will have a private IP starting from 10.0.2. And I say create, and I say close. So with this, my two subnets are created. Now let's go ahead and actually create a virtual machine and see whether the private IP assigned to the virtual machine is actually what we have provided to the VPC and subnet. All right. So I'll go back to my main management console. I'll go to the EC2 service, right click, open in new tab. All right. So in the Singapore region, what is this? In the Singapore region, currently I don't have any running instances. Now, I know we have not talked about EC2 instances and how to create new EC2 instances. We'll have a separate series, a training course on EC2, and that's when we'll cover all this. But for now, just to understand VPC, let's just go ahead and quickly create an EC2 instance. So the way you create is click over here, you say launch an instance. We'll cover AMIs and all this later. I'll just select my own AMI. Basically, I'm selecting what should be the operating system of my VPC, and then rest all I'll go with the defaults. Something that you should be aware over here is I'm just skipping through all these steps now because today's demo is not about creation of EC2 instances, right? We'll go create a detailed video on how to create EC2 instances and what all different parameters mean. So stay tuned for that. But right now the important thing is VPC and how do you create an EC2 instance in a VPC. In step 3, where you say configure instance details, you have this third option which says network. Now typically when you would create it, your instances would be created in the default VPC. I'll click over here. Oops, why is the drop down not coming? And I will select VPC HR. So a drop down comes. I don't know why it's not been captured in the video. So in the drop down, two values are displayed, default VPC and VPC HR. So I select VPC HR. Recall that I said you don't create a VM directly in a VPC, rather you create in a particular subnet of a VPC. So once we have selected the VPC, the next thing that we need to do is select the subnet. I will select this subnet SN web. All right. So with that done, I'll just go rest all. I'll keep it as defaults. Again, saying that I'll talk about the other things later. Now, once we have done that, the next thing that we need to do is over here about the IP addresses. What should be the IP address of our virtual machine? I'll say auto assign it, and let's see what private IP address is assigned to our virtual machine. I'll just go ahead with defaults. I'll say next. I'll give it a name, and I'll say VM web. Say next. We'll talk about security groups in part 3 of this video. So for now, we'll just keep it as defaults. I'll just call this as SG web. Don't worry about it. We'll cover it in our next video. I say review, and I say launch. Is something called as key value pairs. We'll cover all this in our EC2 video. I'll say launch instance. Now, once my instance is launched, and we need to wait for it, the thing that I want to show you is the private IP. It's over here. That's strange. They have changes in the UI. Okay, so if you see here the private IP of our EC2 instance, you can see here what is assigned 10.0.1.76. So that 76 is randomly picked up, but the key point over here is we had given the CIDR block of 10.0.1 to our subnet, and accordingly one IP address only from that particular subnet is picked up. Likewise, if we launch another instance in our SNDB, so I'll say launch another instance in SNDB. This time I'll pick my own IP address. I will not allow it to automatically pick up an IP address. So again over here, I'll select the VPC as VPC HR. This time in subnet, I will select SNDB. And if I go further here, rather than auto assigning the IP address, I can also specify my own IP address, but it has to be within the CIDR block. So I'll say 10.0.2. Remember, .2 is the CIDR block for our SNDB dot maybe 13. I say next. Say next. I add a tag, name VMDB. And I say next. I say next. All right. Again, I say review and I'll say launch. View instances. This time my VMDB is created. So this time, if you notice, the private IP assigned to my VMDB, as we must have guessed by now, is within the CIDR block. And this time I had provided the private IP, but this was within the CIDR block of the VPC as well as within the CIDR block of our subnet. All right. So this is basically subnet. I hope you like the video. In next video, we'll then see how do we actually connect our EC2 instances that we created from the internet. How do we connect to the web browser? How do we connect to the web server using a web browser? And then how do we maybe remote logging to our web servers and database servers? And in that discussion, we'll talk more about what are security groups, and then later we'll talk about network ACLs, internet gateways, NAT gateways, and so on. So stay tuned, stay safe, and hope you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe the YouTube channel. Bye bye guys. Do let me know how do you like this video. Bye bye.